HometownGeek.com.
Hey everyone. In my last video, I promised that I would finish up our little project here, and I would love to do that for you today. I apologize for it taking so long. I know that I took my sweet time doing another video. I've had some real life stuff going on, and I just figured that was something I should be taking care of. But I would like to finish this up so you can see how to finish a complete project. The stuff I'm going to do is I'm going to add some windows, and then I'm going to show you how to texture things the correct way. Things I'll be covering in this video are UV mapping and extruding and things like that. So it should be fun. But I'm going to go ahead and get started here. And in fact, the best way, the easiest way to put a window in is by extruding the face that you're trying to put the window into. And to do that, I'm going to enter edit mode by pressing the tab key. You can toggle back and forth between object and edit mode. But I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to select the face that I want to put a window in, and I'm going to press E to extrude it. And that will make it where the face is connected to the vertices that it was connected to previously. The vertices and the edges that it was connected to previously will be connected to those with other faces now, which will let you stretch and drag and move it without moving the other parts. Which is good, because in this case we want to use it for making a window. And to do that, after I've pressed E to extrude it, I'm going to scale it down to about the size that I want here. And just, we'll do 0.5. Oh. If I could hit the right keys, that would be a lot better. We'll do 0.5, and then I'm just going to press the left mouse button, which sets it there. And there's the start of our window. Okay, now what I want to do here, I'm going to have to move this out of the way. What I want to do here is I want to select this other face, and I want to find out where it is on the y-axis. So I'm just going to Control-C to copy this. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to extrude this face so it connects with this other face over here on the other side. Okay, I'm going to do that by pressing E and then right-clicking. Right-clicking sets it back to the default position, the position it was before you extruded, which is good because then you can use these arrows to move it instead of it being based on the view where you are. Okay, so now that I have this extruded and that face is selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste what I copied before, which will put the window sill exactly where the other face is. And I'm going to hit X to delete this face, and then all I'm left with is the sill itself. Okay, Now, I'm going to delete this face as well, the side here, and I will be able to put that back by selecting these vertices individually. And I've entered wireframe mode by pressing Z. Okay, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to select each corner here. The corner of the wall itself, and then the corner of the windowsill. And then I'm going to press F to fill it in. And I'm going to do that for all four corners. Oops. Oh, selected the wrong one there. So I'm just going to delete that face. Wireframe mode again so I can see. And there's our window. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to select this face, press E to extrude, right click so it sets it back to the position it was before, and scale it down to 0.5. I come over here and find out where this is, and it should be exactly negative what the value was of the other side. And I'm going to extrude this, paste it in, and then I'm going to delete that face again. And I'll do the same thing for the outside face. Okay. Now I will sometimes in wireframe mode it is difficult to tell what vertex you have selected because there is not as much depth. I'm going to fill these faces in by selecting the vertices and pressing the F key. Exit wireframe mode, and there are our windows. Now you can fill those in with faces if you want to. The easiest way to do that is to, and I will show you how to do that real quick. The easiest way to do that is just to select, well, we'll do it one at a time. We'll select that, and then I'm going to duplicate these by pressing Shift and D. And then I'm going to right click so it goes back to where it was before. And I'm going to fill that in. And I'm going to move it in just a little bit so it's approximately in the middle. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the center. I'm going to duplicate it again so there is another face. There's two sides. Okay, and I'm just going to duplicate both of those faces by pressing Shift and D again. And I will move them over to the other window. Pretty well centered again. Okay, that is the windows. Now we are going to do some texturing. The texturing it's pretty simple. It's a little difficult to grasp the concept of UV mapping. The idea of UV mapping is it's basically taking an image, a single image, and placing each of these individual faces on that image, and taking, okay, so like for the roof. For the roof, I'm going to be using a shingles texture. Well, what it's going to do is it's going to place the shingles texture on the roof in a two-dimensional way. Now, if you look at this roof, it is 3D. There are 3 dimensions: height, width, and length. Well, images aren't 3D. Images are 2 dimensions. So it's going to take that 2-dimensional image and project it onto the roof. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this up so I have some room to work with it. And I'm going to go to the UV image editor. Okay, now the first thing that we need to do is we need to assign materials. And in Blender, well, in any 3D modeling, materials are what are used for texturing. They don't necessarily have to have an image associated with them, but materials are what are used for texturing. And I'm going to press N again to hide that window so I have more space here. And I'm going to drag this out. And I'm going to go to the Materials tab, which is the little circle with the orange and dark orange. I don't know what colors those are. But I'm going to assign a new material to the roof here so I can associate a shingles image with it. So I'm going to add a new material by pressing the plus button here. And I create a new material. And I'm going to rename it to shingles. Just by typing in this box and pressing the enter key, it will rename that material. Okay, so I have the faces selected that I want associated with this material, which is exactly what I want. I want them selected, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to press the assign button. When I click the assign button, it will assign those faces to that material. And you can do this with any of the data types, if it's a face or edge or vertex. Okay, so I have that assigned. Now what I want to do is I'm going to press Alt and click between here and here so it selects all of these faces. It's a neat little trick. It makes life so much easier. So I'm just going to press Alt and click on the line itself. Now if I click on the face itself, it will go around in that direction, but I want it to go around in this direction. So I'll press on the line itself, on the edge. Okay, so I have those selected. Now I want to create a new material for this part. And I'm not a architect in real life, so I don't know what that's called off the top of my head, but let's call it the roof sides. So I don't know what that's called, but That'll work. Anyway, okay, so we have those faces selected, and I'm just going to assign them. And now I need one more for the roof underside. Do the same process again. Now I don't know if it's better to not have spaces in it or to have spaces in it or what. It probably doesn't matter, but I usually just leave spaces out because it just seems like it would work better to me without spaces. Okay, if I haven't pressed the sign, I'm going to do that now. So we have those textures. Now we want a texture for the windows themselves. So we're going to assign these faces here to a window texture, or a new material called window. Window. And we'll want one for the floor. Select that face and this face. And we will call this, oops. Added one too many materials. We will call this the floor material. And we'll probably do one for the roof as well. I don't remember if I pressed assign for the floor or not, so we'll just assign it. Okay, so we have all of our materials, and this first default material, if you select nothing and then press select, I guess I didn't get my windows assigned. You will assign it to the window material. We'll assign this to the floor material. And I called that the wrong thing. That is a ceiling, not a roof. And I will assign that. And I will select this material again. And that should be everything that I want selected. Yes, that is perfect. Okay, so this is everything else. We will call this the walls material. Okay. Now, I'm going to select this roof material first. See how whenever I select a face that is associated with that material, it automatically selects it in the materials. And do that for the walls, or the floor, or the ceiling. But I want the roof material selected. Okay, now I'll go over to the texture tab, which is right beside the materials tab. Looks like a checkerboard with red and white squares in it. And I'm going to add a new material. I'm going to call this the this is a texture, I'm sorry, shingles texture. And you'll see that the default setting here is for clouds, which is just going to render random clouds. But what we want to do is we want to use an image or movie. So in the type, we'll select image or movie. Okay? And it will change it to where it has settings for images instead of just the randomized clouds. Now I'm going to open an image. I'm going to go to my textures folder, and I'm going to find a shingles texture. I have several, and that one's fine for what I want to do here. Now you'll notice that whenever you first put a texture on, you can't see it. That's because this is shaded, and that's what this is called, a shading. This is shaded as solid. So what we want to do is we want to go to the texture shading, and the shading is beside the mode select drop down. So we want to change this to textured. And you'll see that by default, whenever you switch to textured mode, that the light sources make a difference now. You'll see that the backside is dark because there is no light source on the backside. And that's an amazing thing. But for now, what we want to do is we want to hit in and scroll down to the display category. And in the shading drop down here, we want to select GLSL. And that will make it where we can actually see the textures on the mesh. Okay, so we have our shingles here, and it's projected onto the mesh, but it's not exactly how we want it. It's just projected onto it in a flat way, and that's not right. So what we need to do is we need to come down here in the textures tab. You come down here, and in the mapping, we need to switch this to UV. But that really messed things up. Okay, and that is because we don't actually have our UVs mapped out. And UV is literally the horizontal and vertical alignment, the mapping for the mesh. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have to define our UVs. And this is difficult for your first time. It's not easy. But what we want to do is we want to, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to hit U, which brings up the UV mapping menu. The U key does. And I'm going to unwrap it so you can see a little bit about what's going on here. Now, this is just a huge mess right now, but basically it puts a map of where the texture should go on the mesh onto an image. It's a UV map. So now that this is a mess, what we want to do is we want to clean it up some. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to define seams. And what seams do is that shows where the mesh should be separated. Because the reason it's like this, the reason it's a mess down here, is because it's not separated. It's just one huge unwrapped deal. So we want it to actually be separated. And what we're going to do is we're going to select everything that we want seamed, and we'll have to do this piece by piece. So I'm going to select this corner here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click Mark Seam. And there's another way you can do that by pressing Control and E, I believe. Yes, Mark Seam. Control and E will bring up the edge menu. Okay, so we have a seam there now. And now I want a seam here. I'm going to mark seam. And I want one over here. A mark seam. And I want one along there. So I'm going to mark seam there too. Now, I've been doing this for a while, so I have had a lot of practice and understand how the UV mapping works. And that's going to take some time to figure out. So you'll just have to play with it and figure out how it works, and you will be able to come up with some really good UV maps. And take complex shapes like this one and unwrap them into something that is it's amazing. It's hard to do, but you can figure it out. Okay, so I want another seam along this wall. Mark seam. And in fact, for the walls, I think I'll probably just do a seam on all the sides. And I want to go back into wireframe mode so I can actually see that. I'm still using the Alt and right click on an edge to do that. Except for when I do that now, it's selecting the bottom as well, and I don't want it to do that right now. So I'll just select those two vertices individually. Okay, mark seam. And now we should have and in fact, just to clarify, this bottom face is very, very unnecessary. Now when you're trying to do efficient mesh, you'll want to understand that unnecessary faces are very inefficient. Because when you're making things for a game or for a scene, everything in that scene has to be rendered. It doesn't matter if it's visible or not, it has to be rendered. So unnecessary faces are very, very bad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that face, because if that's sitting on the ground, it's not visible. And if it's not visible, it doesn't need to be there. So deleting unnecessary faces is a good thing. And that's the reason that I didn't go ahead and UV map the bottom, or mark a seam around the bottom, because it's not necessary. Okay, so I have that part done. The seams, I'm going to go ahead and try and unwrap it now. I'm going to press the U key again to unwrap. And that's a little bit better. It's still pretty messed up down here. And partially because of our windows. The windows here still have, they're still all connected, and we don't want that. So I'm going to select one side and then the other. I'm going to mark seam, and then I'll do the insides as well, and mark seam. And I want to do one corner of the windows. And the reason that I want to do one corner is because when I unwrap this now, it's going to unwrap from this corner all the way around back to that corner. And that will give me one solid piece to texture. So it'll be one solid part to texture. All four of these faces will be unwrapped into a single line. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. I still did not get that marked. Mark seam. There we go. Is this one marked? It is not marked. Why is it not marking that seam? Seam. Now it is marked. Okay. Let's try this again. Now that we have our windows done, we will unwrap one more time. Oh, and that's getting better. But well, we still have our door facing here, our door frame. So we will mark seams here. Mark seam. My right click button is messed up. It double right clicks and I don't like it. But it does. Okay, so we have the front seam marked. We'll mark this back seam, and then we will do the same thing as before and put a seam in that corner. Mark seam. We'll select everything and unwrap. Oh, it's getting really close now. But if you take a look, this is still messed up. And I don't actually know what that is, so I'm going to use this little trick here. If you look at this, keep UV and edit mode mesh selection in sync. And I'm going to press that. I'm going to select nothing in that, and I'm going to allow it to, that will allow it to let me select the vertices in the UV map, and it will select them in the mesh as well. Which is a good thing. It really is, because then you can see what's causing the malfunction down here. Okay, and I see what the problem is now. So I'm going to add, I should have done this before, I'm going to add seams here. Now, the reason that I'm doing the seams piece by piece is because if you select that, it will add a seam down the middle of that, and I don't want there to be one there yet. I might want one later, but I don't think I want one right now. So I will deselect that, and then I will do the next part of it. And that will keep it from putting a seam where I don't want it. Just do it in parts. I'll probably go ahead and do this as well. Mark seam. Okay, I'll select everything and unwrap. That's getting a lot closer. Now we still have this big mess over here, so we will select it and find out where it is, where the issue is coming from. Oh, so I did the outside walls, but I forgot to do the inside walls. So I'm going to go ahead and put a seam on each of these walls here. Mark seam. Why is it letting me select that vertice? I don't know, but I will do it in wireframe mode because I can then. Okay, mark seam. We will mark seam there, and one last one. Mark seam. That should be a lot better. Okay, and now you unwrap. Oh. Still not quite there. And the problem here is, more than likely, the ceiling. So I'm going to separate the ceiling and the floor from this part, from the walls. So actually I'm just going to use face select mode and select the floor and mark seam. Okay, we'll unwrap it, and now we have our full thing here. And there are still some minor issues, and I will address those. Namely, this one. And I don't actually know what's causing that, so I'm going to select that face, and we'll look at it under here and find out what's causing the problem. When I see what's causing the problem, there's a face there that is unnecessary. I don't know how I got that, but I did. So I'm just going to delete that face. Okay, you unwrap. That is a lot better. Now, for the sake of space, and you'll want to get used to this because when you're UV mapping, you want to take up as much of this bottom part as possible. You want to take up as much of this square as you can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to mark this seam. And now when I unwrap it, that will be separated. And now it takes up more of the square here, which is exactly what I was looking for. Okay, now that I have that, let's go back into textured mode. And the reason it's not now is because when you go into wireframe mode, it sends you back into solid after you press the Z key again. So pressing Z will take you out of textured mode. But I'm going to go back into textured mode and look at my roof now. And that's still not how we want it. It's getting closer, but not quite how we want it. And the reason that it's not like we want it is because these two faces are still connected. Now, we don't want them connected anymore, so we'll mark the seam. Okay, we'll select everything and unwrap again. Now it's getting closer to how we want it, but it's still not quite there. And I'm going to show you a little trick. We'll come down here and we'll give it a little bit of a margin. The reason that we want the margin is because all of these pieces are so close together that we can't do anything with them. So we'll take that and add some margin. And now we'll be able to move these around. And to move this stuff around, you'll have to have this turned off. To move this stuff around, you'll select it the same way you select vertices and faces in the mesh. And you will still use the same keys. R to rotate, S to scale, and G to grab, or to translate. The shortcuts in Blender make things really easy. Okay, so what we need selected right now are these two faces. Okay, and one of them is good. One of them are exactly what we want. But this side here is not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this down here, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, or 180 degrees, I'm sorry. And by rotating it at 180 degrees, it changes the direction of our image that's projected onto that face. It's pretty cool, right? Okay. Now, they're facing the right direction, but that's really big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to the texture tab in the properties, and I'm going to make it smaller. And to do that, I'm going to make it repeat itself. So I'm going to do, we'll probably try 5 by 5. And that looks really good, actually. So we'll just keep it 5 by 5. Okay. So it's a seamless texture that I'm tiling. I'm repeating it on that face. Now, if you look at this in the light, it is reflective. That is called specular, and we don't want that on. We don't want it to reflect that light. So I'm going to come back over here to the Materials tab. And I come down here, and I'm going to set the specular intensity to none, to 0, not. Now it doesn't reflect light, which is exactly how we want it. Okay. That's exactly how we want the roof. So we will start on the next part. And I think we'll do the windows now. To do windows in Blender, it's actually pretty easy. We don't need a texture for it. We'll just come down here and we will select transparency in this. And we'll change the alpha to 1.5 will probably be good. 0.15. And now you can see that we can see through the windows. How cool is that? Just by changing that one value. And you'll want Z transparency selected there. If you want to see it in the viewport, you'll want Z transparency. Otherwise, use ray trace. Ray trace is actually a much better way of doing shadows and transparency and stuff like that. So we have the window part done, and I think that's all the texturing I'm going to do. That gives you a decent idea of how to do that kind of stuff. Just remember that UV mapping is important for texturing, and there's a lot of different cool things you can do with it, but that gives you an idea. And now I'm going to switch back over to solid. so I can take one more look at it. Okay. I think that's pretty good. That gives you a decent idea of how to do texturing and UV mapping. If you have any questions or anything like that, ideas for more videos, please let me know. I will be happy to do one for you. Thanks for watching.